final point with regards to Hol HaMoed, death on Hol HaMoed. So a person is allowed to do anything for the needs and for the kavod of a dead person on Hol HaMoed, even if it is melechet uman, digging a grave, doing tahara and everything. One is allowed to do all melechet uman. Obviously, this is for the kavod of the met, for the dignity of the dead person. The major question, though, with regards to a person who loses a relative on Hol HaMoed, who they need to mourn for, is when you do the kiri'ah. So there's an obligation to tear one's garments when they hear, or at the very least at the time of the funeral, of a relative, one of the 7 relatives a person needs to mourn for. So yes, funerals do take place on Hol HaMoed, and of course they should, one shouldn't delay it. But do the relatives need to do kiri'ah? Do they need to tear for it? It's actually a mahloket rishonim about this, based on understanding in the Gemara. The Shulchan Aruch is posek that one does do kiri'ah for all relatives on Hol HaMoed. And this is despite the fact, by the way, that the mourning, the 7-day period of mourning, doesn't start till after the Moed. It's quite peculiar when this happens, and it can be very difficult for the people mourning. But if, let's say, a person loses a loved one, Bar Minan, on the first day of Pesach, or the first day of Sukkot, so the funeral will take place on Hol HaMoed as soon as possible, and then they have to return back somehow to the Simcha of the Moed, and only begin the 7-day Shiva only after the end of Sukkot or the end of Pesach. So technically you can be sitting Shiva for a whole 7-day period for something which happened over a week ago. That can happen. And that's very difficult, of course. But the question is, does one need to do kiri'ah or not? The Shulchan Aruch ruled that one does do kiri'ah, and one does tear their garments for all 7 relatives. The Rama writes the minhag of the Ashkenazim is one only does kiri'ah for one's father or mother. For all other relatives, one does the kiri'ah after the Moed. Now, even amongst Sfaradim, the minhag wasn't always like the Shulchan Aruch. This is a general observation in halachot of avelut, of mourning. Generally, lots of halachot avelut is based on minhag. When it comes to death, people have their own customs. And in Yerushalayim, for example, the minhag wasn't like the Shulchan Aruch. The minhag was only for father and mother. And we find in some Sephardi communities, certainly in Izmir, Kafahim writes the minhag was to do like the Ashkenazim, only father and mother. When there's no known minhag, then the default position, even the Rama writes this, the default position is to do kiri'ah for all relatives, all 7 relatives, and there's no known minhag. So if a person knows their minhag, then he should follow it. But otherwise, for Sfaradim, kiri'ah is done for all relatives, and for Ashkenazim, only for father and mother. With this, we conclude all the halachot of Hol HaMoed, concluding a project which we began a few months ago, beginning with the halachot of Yom Tov, the melachot which are permitted in Yom Tov itself, on 2nd day Yom Tov, travelers, and the whole concept of Hol HaMoed, which, as we've seen, is extensive in many details. And B'ezrat Hashem, I hope we've learned a lot together, and please God, next time we will start a new topic and begin a new subject, B'ezrat Hashem. Kol Tov.